So I was just talking to myself, thinking about, who has the right to individuate, or rather, for whom should that be the path? And I feel that it's the same with all other things. It's a matter up to the individual whether they would like to do that or not. And in fact, the tendency to want to offer a certain path to the individual as a way, I don't know, you don't ever want to do that. You don't ever want to put them in that position. That's why in psychotherapy at least, you make the oath to let them come to you. You don't want to have undue influence, and you don't want to treat people as if they're someone to be helped. Do you have that view of people? I am certainly guilty of that viewpoint, and it's something that I have to continually watch if I wish to be of service, and if I don't wish my own projections to get in the way of treating others. And so the desire to show someone a right way can be an impediment to realizing the fullness or the wholeness of it all. Doesn't mean that we don't offer a hand when we feel called. It doesn't mean that we don't try to help someone that wants help. I have a fantasy of coming across someone, and it could be anywhere, but I lived in San Francisco for a time, and simply asking which people on the street that were asking for help might actually come and sit and talk with me from time to time. Because that would, by its virtue, show that it was to them more valuable than getting any financial compensation from panhandling or whatever the case might be. But to actually come and just talk with me as a human being. I never acted on it. It can be hard to tell. Some people are very, very out of sorts. And it's something I could have explored more. I'll never forget that woman that I picked up. I'll never forget her. And I really did follow an intuition with offering to give her a ride. She told me that there was someone in Lakeway that would take care of her, and I should have asked more questions. I was, I think, 25 at the time. 26 maybe. This is 2019. Now I'd ask more questions like, how do you know this guy? Where are you going? Does he know you're coming? That sort of thing. I needed to ask her more questions before just simply acquiescing to her request. So I thought I was helping, and I was so bent on the aspect of helping that I probably honestly put this person in a more troubling situation, and then just pawned them off to whoever was there. It was very saintly of me, very knightly of me, yeah. But I didn't know what to do. This guy didn't know she was coming. She didn't know his phone number. didn't know where it was. She just knew it was in Lakeway. And she was just not able to tell me, and not able to comprehend on the level of reality that that wasn't going to happen. Which is the definition of psychosis. Very light. But I definitely didn't do her any good taking her from the city to a place where she couldn't hike back. I left her with people that I figured would be friendly and that could support her, because I was out of my depths. Couldn't take care of this woman. Had no idea what the consequences of even doing that would be. But I had to treat her like a human. I treated her with kindness and tried to talk to her and figure out what she was like and who she was. Showed an interest in her that was non-judgmental and wasn't looking for anything. She may have subtly offered me a sexual favor, but I made it clear that I was not looking for anything in return. I forget her name. So long ago at this point. Not that long ago. Which is a long tangent to explain that sometimes our goal of helping can run antithetical to helping people. In a more extreme case, this was the Inquisition. We know for a fact that heresy is corrupting your soul, and if we don't do something about it, you will rot in hell eternally. As a compassionate being, I must save your soul by any means necessary. So I will torture your body. And if the pain of being burned at the stake doesn't make you totally love and accept the love of God, because this is what you'll experience for all eternity, it's honestly not that much different thinking than with the woman that I tried to offer help to. It's the same kind of thinking. It's a very kind of childish way to think. It's going to be like this forever. You sure you don't want to let the love of God into your heart? So just be aware of do-gooding. You know, you can know these things and you can say beware of do-gooding, and then you don't know what that means, but I don't know. To some degree that should help illustrate that. And, you know, I suppose I'm a mouthpiece for it too. I'm trying to say why you should individuate, because part of it is that you do transcend your identification with this piece of you. Because the body contains multitudes, absolutely, but the awareness that we have is only the tip of the proverbial iceberg. So often that's the analogy used. And the more that you try to become conscious of it, the more that you realize that you will never be conscious of all of it. It's everywhere. It's everything. This is but one of its manifestations. And I'm stuck at stage 2 of joining the spirit to the body. That's where I am. The first stage is joining the spirit and soul, the oversoul, with your own individual uniqueness and experience, recognizing that you are a part of all of it. The second part is embodying that and finding out what it is that your soul's mission is. And this is what Plotkin talks a lot about too. Journey for Soul Initiation is a wonderful text on that. So if there's something you're being called to do, you're not just meant to realize that we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. It's not enough to just realize this. And when you do realize this, it flows naturally towards. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's not how a lot of us are wired, but I think a lot of us are wired that way. I think we're wired with a lot of pro-social things. And isn't that lovely that we are? Maybe that's something that we had to cultivate in antiquity. Maybe that's something we had to cultivate in antiquity. Perhaps there are structures set around it that we are not conscious of that allow that to be a reality. To where we don't have to think about it. It is evident to us that everyone is equal on some point. The question is, to how degree should equality be the total metric? Should it just be as homogeneous as possible? And it's all so sticky, because it's a never-ending, because how do you prevent people from being oppressed as well? And ultimately, it's an intrapsychic conflict. There is no difference. If you deny people, certain kinds of people, you're also denying a piece of yourself. And there are many reasons why we wouldn't necessarily want to embody everything in the unconscious. There's many reasons why we don't. And a mentor of mine recently brought up the Gandalf's fight with the Balrog, which is really just a wonderful analogy. And it's so powerful, at least for me. You have to find these stories that resonate really well for you. But Gandalf's been a wizard for many, many years. He's terrified of the Balrog. Life puts him in such a position that he is the most adept at being able to secure that everyone can make it out. And not only that, but it does kill him. And that's not necessarily the journey that everyone has to take. To some extent, we do. But childhood trauma, no matter how severe, is nothing in comparison to the horrors that are in there. It's all vying for manifestation. And I suppose that's our earthly... That's the reason why I'm saying this. Because you don't have to look very far to realize that the psyche is a terrifying place. It's transcendent and terrifying. And there are forces of darkness that you should consider. You should consider whether or not you are adept enough to encounter them. I guarantee you, Gandalf would have chosen not to face the Balrog. He actually recommends that they go through the snow on top of a mountain while it's freezing. He recommends they do that rather than face the possibility of going through and awakening the Balrog. That's why Gandalf doesn't want to do it. But he's a wizard, and he's been tasked with the sacred duty to protect the ring bearer. And he gives him that authority. He says, hey, it's your choice. He gets them out of the snow, but it takes them to the greatest evil that's ever been born out on that land. It's really it's really something to contemplate and consider, that scene. So much information packed into just a few minutes of film. And really, one image will suffice, and that's, the Balrog wreathed in flame, skeletal wings furled out behind it with its fire whip, standing over the bridge of Khazad-dûm, with Gandalf standing there facing it, preventing its passage to the one who bears the light, that bears the burden. And perhaps this is what I'm doing with my life, is going down to those depths. To confront that which is within. And to what degree do I value my psychic stability versus this is the road that we walk. This is the straight and narrow. I guess I can't help but hang out in the place where my psychic stability teeters, because anything more will lead to collapse and to a contamination of my world, my ego, with unconscious contents, what we sometimes refer to as psychosis. And have difficulty distinguishing between reality. This is the thing. Psychic reality does not have to become your external reality in order to be made whole. And that's a question, I'm actually very curious about that, because clearly this is to some degree the shamanic path. A shaman in a traditional culture would externalize his internal world. And this is not necessarily limited to cultures of hallucinogenic plant use. although of course there's much evidence for this in many different cultures. I'm going to speak particularly with regards to Druid because it's one that I have a bit of study in. It's one that I'm related to ancestrally, and with whom I have worked with a representative of that culture. And they externalize it by going into the fairy world, but I believe what hallucinogenic plants do is allow that internal world to manifest through a particular lens. And people will say like, well, ayahuasca shows the true vision, or ketamine shows the true vision, or not bufotenine, that's a different substance, although that one does seem quite interesting, and I would love to try it. But bufo alvarius venom. I mean, shit, I see people out of the corner of my eye sometimes that aren't there. That's a contamination. Doesn't mean I'm going crazy, but you can see where the lines can blur. That's why you have to be careful. That's that dialectic between chaos and order. How far do you go?